what I'm going to do is I'm going to just talk a little bit about the Vietnam War and just generalize, and then I'll come back at a later date and I'll bring some props and we'll talk about things. There's probably two things that stand out or should stand out to you about the Vietnam War. Number one, it was a much hated war, and the troops that came back from Vietnam were very mistreated. Don't you ever do that. You need to respect the flag. Another thing is it was a different war. It wasn't like two big giant forces clashing together and fighting and then one of them wins. It was a war where they hit and run. Had the Viet Cong, we called them Charlie, had they fought us the way that we're used to fighting, we'd have whipped their tails and within inside probably 1 year. But they wouldn't do that. It would be like you walking down this hallway at night, two people jump out at you and smack you around, beat you, maybe even shoot you, and then run. And it's really tough to fight a war like that. The weather was a determining factor. It's hot over there. In fact, I can still remember this day getting off that plane in Quin Yon, and of course we had some battle gear on. We had our rifles, had our helmets, stuff like that. We didn't have the flak jackets. But when we got off that plane and I hit that air, it just took my breath away. It was so hot. And that's the way it was the whole time. In fact, when we would get up, we worked 2 shifts a day. We worked 12-hour shifts, 6 in the morning, 6 at night, 6 at night, and 6 in the morning. We unloaded combat supplies off of ships, brought them to shore, and then delivered them. That was our job. So it was a very important job, but I'll tell you, it was a hot job. And when it's not the monsoon it cools down quite a bit because it rains a lot. But during just the other time, the other 10 months, 9 months, it is so hot that we got up at 4 o'clock. We went down and got your quote breakfast, and by the time the sun started coming up, you're already sweat through your uniforms. Your boots are white with sweat, and it's just a miserable place. Now we've got some beautiful beaches. I was like Eddie. I was around the water a lot, and they do have some beautiful beaches. But it was a very different war, and probably one of the real downer things about the Vietnam War is there are a lot of people that were in the Vietnam War that are still suffering today from physical ailments, cancer, Agent Orange. They use that stuff. Now, that was our own government that turned the Agent Orange on us. And that Agent Orange, I know our people, we unloaded a lot of that Agent Orange. I was very fortunate. I didn't have any repercussions from it much, but there are a lot of guys that did. But they would drop that stuff from the skies. And what Agent Orange did is it killed everything. Plants. Yeah, it killed everything. And I saw that firsthand. I took 2 truck convoys up to First Air Cab and we unloaded them. First one we went several days after we started unloading them. The second time we went up there probably about a month, 6 weeks later, and they had dropped that Agent Orange into this one place they call the hairpin curve, because that's usually where the Viet Cong attack you. And that foliage was completely gone. Everything was dead. But it also affected humans. And it not only affected our guys, but it affected the Vietnamese too. And that's one of the real shames of the whole thing. It was bad enough to be over there and fighting that kind of war, but there for a while we were doing quite well. But it's just a tough war to fight because we're just not used to fighting that. And we got the same thing in Afghanistan and Iraq. They hit and run. You've heard of those IEDs, those roadside bombs. Well, that's essentially the same thing, because we actually lined the back. We rode around a lot in a 2.5 pickup, which is a huge pickup, big truck. And we lined the bed of that thing with sandbags, 1 and 2 deep. So in case anything blew up underneath, then we would be somewhat protected, not completely, but somewhat. Do I have any quick questions? And then I'll come back later and we'll talk about some more stuff. Yeah. I was 20. Oh, when it started, 20. Well, I was about 18 when it started. I went in when I was 24. Anybody else? Yeah. No. No, yeah. This? POWMIA. We still have people that are. We have about 1,800 soldiers from Vietnam that are still missing. They can't find them. They're obviously they're dead.
POW stands for prisoner of war. MIA stands for missing in action.
Right.
And as an organization, the VFW honors them daily. We have a chair up at the VFW post that is the chair that's solely reserved for MIAs and POWs, and no one's allowed to sit in that chair. It has the black draped over it with the POWMIA on it.
Any other questions? Yeah. About 2.5 million went over. At some point between 59 and 72, and of those we lost 58,200 and some odd, or 300 and some odd. Every time the wall comes in around here, a lot of us go visit that wall, the Vietnam vets, because it's a bond to us, between us and the people that are on the wall. I think there was like almost 400,000 wounded. And like I said, today we're even getting more and more casualty as time goes on. And these guys get older. There were like 8 nurses that were killed. That is probably the person that I respect the most of the Vietnam conflict, was the nurses and the doctors that took care of these guys. Because I was involved in that just a little bit, and I can tell you it's horrific. And they do that day in and day out, for the whole year tour that they're there. And some of them even stayed longer than that. I mean, can you imagine just constant casualties coming in all day? And there'd be a nurse up front at the triage, and they'd be making the determination whether you die or you die. Because they say, well, this one's the worst, so there's no point in even fooling with them. We take the other person. That just blows me away. Any other questions? Yeah. Huh? Well, the Vietnam War, nobody really won. But like I said a while ago, you meet face to face, head to head. We kicked their tails every time there was a major battle, and they actually come up to us and fought us. Because we were superior. But this hit and run tactic, we just weren't used to it. And so nobody really won. In fact, everybody lost. Get right down to it. I mean,
the public opinion in this country back in the 1960s, you will learn throughout your school years about it. Public opinion got so bad that we actually pulled out of Vietnam in 1972, if I remember the year correct. We actually left Vietnam to defend itself. 3 years later, South Vietnam fell and North Vietnam took over the country in a unification process. We actually were not losers, but we were not winners either. Right. And as Phil said, head to head, they were no match for us. But it kind of reminisces to me of how we fought the British when we, back in, I can't remember the date, 1770s, something like that. We fought the British on hit and run tactics. Well, that was a different war, with the British, yes. But during our declaration of our country, we fought the British on hit and run tactics. And this was basically the same that the South Vietnamese, Viet Cong, and North Vietnamese did to us.
Well, I think we're out of time. So, yes, ma'am.
I was in high school during the Vietnam War,
Mm-hmm.
and I know firsthand that you fellas did not come home war hero.
No.
Amen.
People rebelled against the Vietnam War, and they took it out on the gentleman that served there.
Yep.
So, I salute them.
Thank you. Okay. Let's call it a day for today, and like I said, I'll come back and bring some